American spirit. You disobey a law when it's totally out of whack. You really do. We started it in the Boston Tea Party, and we're going to continue it. We did it with civil rights. We had to disobey the law a lot to get civil rights through. People that came across that border were coming across because they had good communications about job possibilities. If they hadn't had it, they wouldn't have come. And essentially, that's what we're faced with at the current time. So I say, let's get away from this hang-up on trying to enforce laws that are clearly not in the best interest of our country.
Immigrants have been responsible for half of the economic growth in the past decade and a half. Half of all the new jobs that we've created for a decade and a half we could not have created if we didn't have immigrants here to fill them. We can't grow a new business without workers, and we wouldn't have been able to. They're not taking jobs from Americans. We're at full employment.
The last time I checked, African Americans had a 8.2 unemployment rate for across the board and 9-point-something for black men. And so that's not full employment. It doesn't count the 200,000 or so that drop out of the labor market each month because they give up. And so we need to not discount the impact on African Americans, even if they're the only group that's adversely affected.
And as a consequence, one of the revisions we need as part of comprehensive immigration reform, and much more like we're talking about here, is documentation that's fraud-proof and a way for employers to know, yes or no, not unequivocally, but yes or no, that this is a legitimate document held by an authorized person able to work in this country. And then we can begin to take part in an effective, mandatory immigration enforcement program.
I think that the risk to civil liberties of a national ID card are trivial at this point, and that by trying to make state driver's licenses into a national identification system is a very imperfect way of doing it, because A, the biggest effect is to drive up rates of non-insured drivers in states, and B, not all workers drive. And I think that if we're going to have a national identification system, we should have a national identification system, and it should be required of all Americans, and it should include a machine-readable strip.
I would say that most restaurants in New Jersey would not be able to open without this workforce. There's just nobody coming in for those jobs otherwise.
You can say whatever you want on gross national product, the increase in the economy and so forth, but people keep coming to us because they are suffering in their pocketbooks, Americans. And we will continue to grow as long as this immigration problem continues. As long as this massive group of people, 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 people a week, are coming across to take American jobs. Every illegal that's here is taking an American job that belongs to an American citizen, and it's the same as stealing money out of his pocket.
We should take a look at the creation of a temporary guest worker program first, and if that's agreeable, and if that does happen at the Congress level, then I think the others will fall in place. Even the first one there with the the responsibility on the businesses, the employers. But we have to really create that sort of temporary guest worker program. And Mr. Pietro, I agree exactly with what he's saying, because as it is right now, unless we find out at the end of the week that the U.S. Senate is going to give us a good comprehensive legislation bill that they can send to the House, that's fine. But until then, it's our local municipalities, and Mayor Princeton, you understand this as well as I do, that the municipalities are the ones that have to try to solve the problems, and we're trying to do it the best way we can.
I think that speaks very meaningfully to the organizations that are part of the policy network, and to the experience that many immigrants are having in our communities today. And it has to do with the manner in which our country laws are enforced, and the inhumanity that individuals are being subjected to. And I would actually propose that we have a moratorium while there's an opportunity for undocumented workers to legalize their status.
To me, a huge silence in this debate is about the state of play for the 34 million, 35.5 million, 37 million low-wage workers in the United States and the lack of enforcement and monitoring in low-wage industries. We have industries now that are 100% out of compliance, the poultry industry, landscaping, construction, garment. So there's this kind of assumption made that, you know, if we just change our immigration laws, that, that standards will rise, and not an understanding that actually cheap labor is a problem, and exploitation of labor is a problem, and that we have to take the bull by the horns and do something to strengthen our our enforcement regime. And I don't just mean immigration law, I mean our labor and employment law enforcement. Well, I mean, I thought it was interesting that the one area of consensus the entire morning, a green card around the room, was about the need to improve and sort of really come up with new strategies for labor enforcement, labor and employment enforcement. So I thought that was really interesting.
That we need to register everybody that's here so we know who's here, so they pay taxes, pay Social Security, and I believe there needs to be a permanent solution. I don't support amnesty, but I do support permitting the workers into the country through an organized method, and by giving them a document, a visa that will permit them to stay here for some period of time and then return to their country, and then they'll be able to come back. But it's not blanket amnesty. I think what's more important is enforcement, so that after, if Congress finally decides what to do, how to solve this problem, there will be an enforcement procedure. I think that any contractor who hires somebody that's illegal needs to be punished severely, and I think a $100,000 fine on the first offense is the way to go. And